Digital transformation is the most misunderstood term for the past 10 years because if you have the conversation with a CIO, they will talk to you about how they want to refresh their infrastructure. If you want to talk to someone in the marketing, like a CMO, they will say how they want to digitize their
Your
campaigns. If you
processes,
want to talk about the
exactly.
CBO, they're going to talk about e-commerce. So everybody has understands different parts of the elephant, but if you ask the CEO, which I think this is where transformation really starts, they will say that it's focusing or refocusing the company on what the customer needs.
Welcome to the Rozy Effect, where I give you the keys to lead digital transformation. I'm your host, Rozy Amponsa. Today's guest comes to the conversation with a breadth of leadership experience across major tech companies, leading customers on their journey of digital transformation. Eve Psalti. She's currently based in LA, California, is the head of strategic platforms for Google Cloud, responsible for the Canada, US, and Latin America regions. She's currently working with enterprise customers across industries and geos to help them grow their businesses through digital transformation initiatives, optimizing their operations and delighting their customers through seamless digital experiences, all powered by cloud technologies and digital platforms. Prior to joining Google in 2018, Eve held business development, sales, and marketing leadership positions at Microsoft for 17 years and startups across the US and Europe. Her latest leadership position before Google was leading the global education program strategy for Microsoft across K-12 and higher education, helping educators, administrators, and students drive strong learning outcomes through technology. A native of Greece, she holds a master's degree and several technology and business certifications from London Business School and the University of Washington. She's also passionate about ed tech initiatives and enabling underrepresented communities to have access to leadership and career growth opportunities through STEM. I'm excited about this conversation as a leader, really guiding businesses through that transformation, being able to have visibility across organizations, leading in tech companies. Let's get into the conversation. Hi, and good afternoon, good evening. Eve, it is a pleasure to have an opportunity to, I guess at this point, to meet you again. Thank you so much for taking time to chat with me today.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah, your expertise across tech companies, supporting customers across industries, your in-depth expertise in the tech sector, in the education sector. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So let's dig right into it. You've
All right.
experienced a depth of, experience and exposure when we talk about digital transformation. Share with me how you would define digital transformation and what makes it successful.
Yeah, definitely. I think digital transformation is the most misunderstood term for the past 10 years because if you have the conversation with a CIO, they will talk to you about how they want to refresh their infrastructure. If you want to talk to someone in the marketing, like a CMO, they will say how they want to digitize their
Your
campaigns. If you
processes,
want to talk about
exactly.
the CBO, they're going to talk about e-commerce. So everybody has understands different parts of the elephant. But if you ask the CEO, which I think this is where transformation really starts, they will say that it's across multiple areas. It's focusing or refocusing the company on what the customer needs. A lot of times we are so involved in our own processes that we forget the paramount goal, our North Star for every single company, which is what their customers want. And what the customers want today differs from what they've done in the past. So the company has to really be abreast of all these different evolutions, how customers change their needs, their wants, and really focus on getting this right. The other piece is around the technological advancements like AI or machine learning, deep learning, that really propel us to try different use cases. So we see, for example, how companies can now modernize their customer care programs using AI so that they can provide more self-help options. They can personalize the service more. So I think any advancements we have on the tech side really help move that conversation and that transformation forward.
To add on to your key points that you're mentioning, how does leadership go about defining success when the CEO makes a decision, or how do we get, the CEO to see that this is needed, and how do they define success for that bigger picture, the elephant, when it comes to digital transformation?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, the definition of success differs from company to company, industry to industry. Also, it depends on the company culture too. But to be honest, what I've seen, I would say that half of the CEOs that we talk to, that I talk to, that have the digital transformation in as their plan, as kind of like their North Star, have no digital transformation KPIs. So
Huh.
no success metrics. That's why I'm saying a lot of times people just use it as a way to please their board of their directors or the street because it's a buzzword and this is what everybody really is expected to do.
Hmm.
But at the end of the day, if you don't have, as I said, the customer focus, if you don't have the KPIs, if you don't really drive the accountability on the other end, then you don't know if you have done it right or not. And
True.
KPIs can be, or success metrics can be across different sides. It can be a pure ROI, a return on investment. It
Yep.
can be any efficiencies they can drive on the operation side. It
Lowering
can
costs. Yeah.
be customer satisfaction. It can be employee satisfaction because the happier your employees are, the more they can innovate, the longer they'll stick around. And then that has a direct impact on the revenue side.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of different ways you can really translate if digital transformation works, but it's important to have these thresholds along the way.
Mm. Mm. I'm so glad you hit on this idea of it becomes just a fancy thing to talk about, just to kind of whet folks' appetite. But the reality of it is, what are the specific KPIs? How are you focusing on the business goals, whether it's internal, whether it's external, to be able to get you to that vision? So being super specific, defining a use case is what I'm hearing. Let's talk
Yeah.
about now we have COVID-19, as we know, has basically disrupted, right, and exposed
Yeah.
certain sides of a business. So now the conversation of it becoming the cute thing to talk about, the cool thing to talk about, organizations are being forced, right, to utilize or put band-aids on certain things that they need to fix and look at it long-term moving forward. So how should leaders be thinking about that long-term strategy in terms of positioning their business to be able to navigate this level of uncertainty?
Yeah. No, you're right. And this is really unfortunate. But also, I think there is a silver lining to that. I mean, obviously, you've seen a lot of industries like the travel and hospitality industry, a lot of areas in retail being heavily impacted. But to be honest, what I've seen with the customers that I talk to every day is that this actually propelled them to accelerate their digital transformation plans. So the leaders that are not as visionary and they don't want to take risks and they don't want to be bold and differentiate themselves in the market, they will have kind of like an old thinking type of mentality, and they will focus on cost savings, which I get it, it's essential as a
Yeah.
short term goal, but it can't be your long term goal. You are not going to differentiate and win in the market if you only focus
You
on
just keep
cost
cutting
savings.
costs, cutting costs, cutting costs.
Exactly, because you're not meeting your customers' expectation. You're not meeting, your
No.
employees' expectation with the street's expectation. So you really need to balance that effort on cost savings with business growth. If you
Mm.
don't have a long plan, and if you don't have the ability and the agility to pivot what you're currently doing, and pivot to adjust for the long term, which can be 12 months, it can be 18 or 36 months. We don't know how long this will last. Then I don't think there is a future for these companies. And we have seen it, like, for a lot of different industries, like, restaurants pivoting on the takeout business. We've
Yes.
seen manufacturing pivoting from one product line to another.
Yeah.
Um, so a lot of retailers that I work with that heavily dependent on their brick and mortar operations, now they're accelerating their e-commerce strategies.
Yeah, the
And to
digital
be honest,
experiences.
if you have that, exactly, if you have that, then you are establishing a customer behavior that will remain in the long run. So whatever investments you're doing now, they will carry you through in the long term too.
And I'm constantly noticing that, the customer expectations continue to rise. The need, the desire the customer wants, that's not going anywhere. So what are the innovative ways that, right, the organization can utilize to, think of, innovating and getting to the customer and being able to reach to the customer, because the customer still needs, right, that service, that product. So what does that transformation look like for them?
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. Have you experienced, or would you be able to share an unconventional strategy that you've utilized that you saw that did surprisingly well, or you've seen in the marketplace?
Well, I can kind of like talk about it from my experience. Which it shouldn't be as unconventional, but not a lot of people are doing it, so that's why I'm going to bring it up. Basically, I've been in the technology industry for like the past 20 plus years,
Yes.
and usually the common assumption, which is also a misconception, is that the technology decisions are being made by the CIO and the CTO,
Hmm.
which, to be honest, is not true. It's a myth. I think the technology decisions are being made by the business leaders, whether it's the CEO,
Uh,
whether it's the CDO, the CMO, the COO, CFO, like literally anybody else. And I say that because a lot of times, I mean, and when we talk about like cloud or CRM or APIs or AI, whatever that
the exciting cool thing is
technology,
nowadays.
exactly, whatever exciting technology solutions or offers we have, we always zero in and we talk exclusively to IT. And IT, to be honest, is a lot of times reacting to whatever the business is directing them to do. So I wouldn't call it an unconventional strategy. For me, it was always common sense, but many others or most of others are not utilizing it because they have like a playbook in place that says if for any technology conversation we're going to go and talk to the CIO. But if you understand what they're trying to solve from a business standpoint, which is more attached to whatever drives revenue, whatever drives customer satisfaction, you go more upstream into understanding what the vision is, what they're trying to solve for. And you have the ability to cater to that message in a more contextual way rather than giving them an out of the box tool.
Mm, mm, mm. Okay, so it seems still that top-down approach, being able to identify who the key decision makers are and being able to
But
provide
across
those
the board,
resources across the board.
not only in IT, but really, I mean, and we see that, this is how the decisions are being made, right? I mean, you have to identify what levers any company has to drive revenue, to realize their overall goals, and then map your solution or however you can help them optimize or accelerate these plans across the board. And a technology conversation is never within the technology department. I think now more and more we see now with the acceleration of like different technologies, as we say, we see more and more companies, all types of companies, becoming tech companies.
Yes.
Because this is where
Yes.
innovation starts, right? I mean, the
Mm-hmm.
same way we say that every individual should have a baseline of STEM skills and understanding. Similarly, we say that every company, regardless of whether they sell pencils or chips, then they need to operate as a tech company,
Company.
because this is what is going to make them efficient. This is what we help them innovate, and this is how we see companies really becoming the new Uber and
Yes.
the new Airbnb of the world.
Yes, I'm so glad you touched on that because when an organization is positioned to basically be a tech company, and it looks like moving forward, in order for companies to be agile, to be innovative, that's the way they're going to be thinking. And it seems like a lot of it is stemmed on the organization's people. So let's touch a bit about that, right?
Yeah,
I think sometimes we underestimate the power of the people and the mindset. So
absolutely.
how should leadership gain visibility with their people and be able to understand in order to drive that transformation that they desire?
That's a great question. And to be honest, this is very underestimated, as you say. A company is not like, something philosophical and really
Yes.
detached from the individuals that really create that. And creating and maintaining that company culture is really, really key. And
Mm,
you see that, strong companies have strong culture as well. Whether you see, like GE back in the day, or Amazon, or Microsoft, or Google, they all have a very distinct, and of course other companies as well, but they all have a very distinct culture. It's very
mhm,
different and
mhm,
unique to them, but this
mhm.
is what unifies everyone working in that environment, right? And it's really important to make sure that the company is mission and vision driven. And I think this is what makes people kind of like, really align under a common goal. And
Mm,
also, what is the company's role within the broader community? Everything from how are decisions being made, how open or how making process, managed? Is it via feedback? Who is participating? How often? Again, and how are projects being identified? The communications, how clear, how transparent these communications are. It's all of these pieces create the culture that is really key for the employees to thrive
mhm,
or not really in an
mhm,
environment.
mhm.
And we see from research that shows that happy employees are 12% more productive than the
They take
ones that
care.
are not.
They take care of the
Exactly.
company. Yeah. Yeah.
And also, the higher your employee engagement, or companies that have this high employee engagement, people participate in the product development, in the decision making. It's not like a top-down culture. They have 22% more revenues than the top-down companies. So it really
Wow.
works. Really works, and it's not
Wow.
only because it's the right thing to do, but it's because it's the most profitable thing too.
Okay. Wow. So, as an organization who might not necessarily have started off being agile and they're like, okay, we have to figure this out. What are the key characteristics they're looking for in leaders and in their employees to identify those
Mhm.
individuals that really could lead that initiative for them?
That's a good question. I would say that what are they looking for, the leaders or the employees,
The
or either?
employees, either or,
Yeah,
right? It's all about the
yeah,
people that's going to lead them into this sense of innovation. I need
yeah.
those people to take charge. Who am I looking for?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. You need leaders at any level, at every level. And I say that because I've always hired people and I've always kind of cultivated teams, telling them that they are the CEO of their domain. It doesn't matter if you're an individual contributor or if you have a team of 300. it doesn't really matter. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter if you're a project manager or an IT architect. If you treat what you do as the CEO of your own company, you will bring the initiative, you will bring the passion, you will
Mm-hmm.
bring the dedication, the collaboration, harvesting everybody's ideas, bringing everybody together, and really aiming for that impact, the so what.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have all of these characteristics, you are the mini CEO of that project or of this particular role. And it solves a lot of issues, right? Because it's not about, well, I was not really assigned to that, or, oh, you didn't tell me. Giving them free reign, like a framework of reference and a North Star of like, this is the ambition that we're
Mm-hmm.
all rallying around, but leaving them alone to like create that plan around it and really keeping them accountable, I think is really, really key. And also the other piece that I'm personally looking for, and I've seen kind of like people being successful with these traits, is the is making sure that they're lifelong learners. I think the notion that we went to university, we did our masters, PhDs,
We're
whatever
done.
it is.
Lock
It was
it.
a
Throw
long
it
time.
somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm done. This is it. It's not true because whatever we learned, like I finished school like 20 years ago, right? I mean, what I've learned in computer science 20 years ago is very much relevant
Mm-hmm.
right now.
Mm-hmm.
So it means that I have to go back on a regular basis, reskill, upskill, do the micro credentialing, do an online training, do kind of like a semester here, a quarter here, a certification there, which is really, really key. So I think identifying people and also nurturing people towards this type of behavior, whether it's on the job training or mentoring or being reskilled or upskilled through a third party kind of like, more traditional channel, is absolutely key.
I'm so glad you touched on scaling because I want to delve a bit deeper because people really are at the core of an organization, especially when they're looking to do this transformation. So how does an organization go about upskilling their team? In today's,
Yeah.
teams, we see such a melting pot, right, of generations. How should leadership go about really positioning themselves to still bring that same value across the board within the organization?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it depends how, and you're absolutely right. Now we're dealing with people that are like, 60 years old and people that are 20 years old. They're digital natives
Yeah,
versus more
exactly.
traditional profiles. How do you reconcile? And to be honest, one size does not fit all, right? And it has to be a personalized uh, plan for every person, for every employee, and it needs to have kind of like different components, as I said. I believe that a lot of the learnings come from on-the-job training,
Yeah.
because the more you do, the more like, you get assigned to a different team, to a different project, you get stretched into an environment that you don't feel like
You know
everything. The
everything. Yeah.
moment,
Yeah.
exactly, the moment you feel like, oh, I don't know
A
about
bit
this,
uncomfortable
this is where
here.
you learn the more.
Abs-
Exactly. You
Got it.
need to be putting yourself into and allowing your leaders to, position you in areas where you feel least comfortable with.
Hmm.
So definitely, I would say a big percentage of growth comes from on-the-job training and learning. The other piece that I think not all companies have, a set program around is mentoring and coaching. To make sure that we really not only do the knowledge transfer from the older employees to the younger employees, but also closing the loop, because I think the mentoring and the coaching piece goes both ways.
Mhm,
So
mhm.
it's a great way to cross pollinate behaviors
Yeah.
and best practices across all the employees. And the third piece is, as I said, the more traditional training, where you can do. I'm a true believer in micro credentialing. You don't have to have five different
Mm,
degrees. I don't think it's relevant for this type of environment. I think any type of certifications that
mhm,
really kind of
mhm.
like, get you to the next level are really, really key. And the last piece that I think that companies are not doing enough is creating these communities of practice. So how do we get, like, if we want people to be better at project management, or if we want people to be better at, coding or whatever the goal is, right? How do we create this internal
Bringing
communities of
these communities
practice
together.
so that
Ah.
we can help them grow in that environment?
Wow. You know, I was speaking to another leader who kind of touches on what you're talking about, and she calls it the individual transformation. And with
Yeah,
all the key elements that you're mentioning about, it seems like those are the pieces to the puzzle, especially with all that's going on around us, you know, individuals losing their jobs, things
absolutely.
changing around us. This is also that opportunity to upskill ourselves, to find the right resources. And as you said, micro certificate. I like the term you gave it.
Micro credentialing.
Micro credentialing. I'm gonna have to steal that one, Eve. Micro credential, that's super cool. Man, I can't finish on people without touching on when we talk about the impact of diversity on an organization. You know, with everything that's going on around us, the tension of racial biases, the impact with COVID-19, we've realized that there is immense opportunity for diversity
Yes.
to really shift from the conversation to actually implementation. So
Yeah.
how should leaders go about now taking this conversation? Now a lot of people are sitting back looking to see what's going to happen. What is your advice to leadership when it comes to actually making that transition and actuating that conversation?
Mhm. That is a top of mind topic, and hopefully now it's becoming top of mind for everyone. To be honest, for the longest time, it was something for leaders to check the box. I've been in companies that had a diversity and inclusion program, and everybody felt good about it because we had a
We're good.
representative
Check. Let's
there.
keep moving.
Exactly. And
Ah.
this doesn't even scratch the surface, right? I think we have a long way to go on this. A long way. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's not good. It's not good in corporate America. It's not good in the SMB, in the small or mid-sized business. It's not good when you look at the startup businesses. Communities, underrepresented communities are not getting the funding that they need. In corporate America, underrepresented communities are not getting into the C-suite, and this is a huge issue. And it's an issue that we need to be very, very mindful about it. And a program does not cut it. It's hand waving. It means absolutely nothing. We need a commitment from the leaders to say that we're going to cultivate the talent pipeline, and we're going to be open, and we're going to have clear career paths that are not linear and multi-dimensional. We need to have a diversity and inclusion plan with metrics and goals of how many of them we can get into the decision-making seats. It's not about numbers, because you can still say, oh, we hired, 30% XYZ,
And you
check,
see that,
done.
right? It's like you,
Yeah,
because they always find a way to be able to check that
and
box.
it's insulting. It's insulting at best. We need to make sure that to have the qualitative metrics, how many CEOs we see that are that diverse, how many in the C-suite, out of all the people that we are hiring, are we looking beyond the channels that we were used to look? Because a lot of times there is bias in all of us, given the people we know, the universities that we went to, the neighborhoods we grew up, the areas that we live. There is really clear balance. Like, look at the companies in the Bay Area. How are you going to have a diverse employee base if you're in the Bay Area, if you're not in DC, if you're not in Atlanta, if you're not in the Miami area? Like, there is no way. So I don't think companies, we all want to do the right thing, but we need to get out of our box and really think kind of like upstream. How are we getting this talent pool? Where are we looking? And what are we looking for? The moment we redesign and we rethink and we reimagine what this process is, we're going to talk about equity.
Hmm. 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 So it seems like there shouldn't be a problem and an issue around being able to
The
garner
talent is
that
there.
talent. Exactly. So then the
The
question
talent is there.
becomes, what is the excuse, right? What is the holdback, in preventing more of exposure of talented individuals with different backgrounds, people of color, whether it be Hispanic, Black individuals, whatever, you know what I mean? Being able to have access to these roles. And
Exactly.
we being in tech, we see this all the time, and it's quite the topic.
And
So
you need to see that at the leadership level.
yes,
If
yes.
I don't see it at the C-suite, if I don't see it at the startup CEOs, at the small and mid-sized business or
Hmm.
owners, then the representation is not there, the role models are not there, and we're not doing anything towards progress.
Hmm. Hmm. As you can tell, this is a near dear subtopic to my heart. Overall, we've touched on people, and obviously that feeds into the culture of an organization. Shed a bit more about really how the wholesomeness of culture plays a role in an organization when we look at digital transformation.
Yeah. I mean, when we talk about transformation and actual change, you need to connect at three different layers, right? One is the rational
Mm.
layer. Oh, digital transformation will drive more revenues. It will streamline our processes. It will, kind of like, drive more efficiencies in our operations. There is kind of like the rationalization of it. The other piece is the emotional piece. So digital transformation, although it's something that is aspirational, it can create a lot of anxiety, because it's like, would I have the job that I have? Does this mean that I'm
Change
getting
happens.
obsolete? What does this mean for me on the employee side and also on the customer side? Because everybody's is afraid of change, and I think it can be interpreted in different ways. And also it's the behavior. So it's kind of like, you think of the head, the heart, and the feet. And it's also the behavior. So in the behavior, this is where the culture comes into play. Half of the efforts, actually, I would say 70% of the digital transformation initiatives that I've seen failed because the the heart and the feet didn't go with the head. So everybody across the board agreed that that was the right thing to do, but there were employees that were reluctant to take risks, or they were not really encouraged to drive that change forward.
Mhm.
And also, there were no processes. So without a process about cultural transformation, you can't transform the actual company.
Mm.
So, and again, it goes back like, how do you build that, right? You need to make sure that you have clear and transparent goals. You have to have
Yeah.
open communication so that everybody knows what's at stake, why we're doing this, how long it's going to take, what's our role in driving this, and also have these thresholds of success metrics along the way, so that we know that we're doing the right thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
So I would say, yeah, so outside of the rational piece, make sure that there is the cultural transformation
Yeah.
to really support that change.
Mm. Mm. The heart, the mind, the heart, and the feet needs to have alignment in order
Yes.
for the cultural change to occur. All these tidbits. Are you sure you're not writing a book, Eve? Because I'm gonna need to get copy of your book. Wow. To sort of sum up culture at large, right? How should our leadership look at taking the strategies that you've shared today and be able to drive agility, right? Agile processes. When we look at implementing design thinking, it's all exciting, right? But then how does that really sort of manifest itself into the business so that it become valuable to this change and innovation that an organization is looking to go on?
Yeah. Well, I would say, like, it starts first with making sure that we identify and capitalize on the right market opportunities and have an assessment over time, because this change, right? You might have a 3-year plan, but then COVID happens in year 2, so the whole plan is being scrapped.
Out the
So
window.
being able to pivot and carry the rest of the organization with you, it's absolutely key. The other piece is, which again it's underestimated, is driving that execution. A lot of companies have lofty goals, but they don't have the processes to drive that execution. Decision making also is really key, because you want to make sure that the decision making is agile enough and it's not only top down, because you need that feedback loop, from your customers, from your employees, so that you can continue to iterate. So it's not a linear process, but it's also like a circular
Yeah.
process.
Yeah.
And I think this is kind of and having a culture of change, because again, people are very afraid of change, and really allowing this and making it the norm and something that is being highlighted and recognized and celebrated is really key for that company to be successful. And also leading by a example. So it's good for leaders to be vulnerable, to come across as they don't have all the answers. It's good to have like an ambition and a clear vision, but then nobody really expects you as a leader to know everything. This is where the collaborative type of environment comes into play, that informs this decision making, and I think it helps with bringing better business outcomes for that company.
And that sense of vulnerability too can build trust, right? From that employee
Absolutely.
to leadership relationship. Wow.
Yeah.
This has
Yeah.
been a good
Absolutely.
conversation. Man, if leaders are looking to follow you, Eve, how do they do that? Because you have wise words of wisdom when it comes to leading change in organizations.
I'm just sharing what I'm learning. So they can follow me on Twitter at Eve Psalti, and also on LinkedIn.
Super cool. Eve, once again, I'm so grateful for your time. It's always a pleasure getting an opportunity to chat with you. So thank you for taking time to sit down and chat with me today.
Thank you so much. The pleasure was all mine.
All right, leaders, an amazing conversation with Eve, really shedding light on key strategies that tech leaders like yourself can really take into your organization, implement it within your teams, looking to undergo this journey of transformation. Because as we know, with the impact that we're currently facing with the pandemic, you're either shifting or it's shifting for you. So very grateful to have such amazing conversations, shedding light from a leadership perspective on what leaders need to be thinking about, what that mindset means, how to go from the conversation to actualizing really key elements that play into the success of digital transformation. Thank you so much for watching and listening to The Rozy Effect. You already know we don't walk to therozyeffect.com, we run. So run to therozyeffect.com. That is TheRozyEffect.com, and subscribe. You got questions? You got concerns? You want to recommend someone? You want to work with me? Share your thoughts on the website. All right. Until next time, I'm your host, Rozy Amponsa.